Hi guys, the JazzieNerd here, and welcome to another episode of the Sunday Snippet. Now, I just wanted to clarify one thing from last week's episode. I said that the New Testament never specifically mentions homosexuality, and that's wrong. The New Testament does actually mention it twice, once in 1 Corinthians and once in 1 Timothy, and neither verse is very positive on the subject. The verse in Corinthians even says that those who practice it cannot, quote, inherit the kingdom of God. Interestingly, this verse is followed by a long speech on, quote, sexual sin, in which homosexuality is not specifically mentioned once. Kind of interesting there. So anyway, does this mean I'm wrong with my theories from the last video? No, at least I don't think so. You have to remember that Paul was as flawed as any other human being. That's a very central tenet of Christianity, that we are all flawed. And you don't really need the Bible to realize that we're all flawed. The Bible makes that very clear, that Paul was a flawed man. Just look at the kind of person he was before his name was changed. Therefore, anything he says in his letters has to be taken with a grain of salt, because as divinely inspired as he may have been, he was still perfectly capable of misunderstanding what God was trying to tell him. Not to mention the possibility that his initial meaning could have been lost in translation. Because let's face it, the Bible went from Hebrew or whatever language it was originally in, to Latin, to Greek, to English, and not to mention all the different versions. Anyway, Jesus, on the other hand, never mentioned homosexuality, and he is the one person I can absolutely say never misunderstood God. The one person whose words do not need to be taken with a grain of salt because he was God. So my point stands. Now, that was not the focus of today's episode. The focus of today's episode is this. So I wanted to discuss just something regarding the rich. A girl in my Intro to Religious Studies class, which I took my first semester of college, she interpreted the parable of Lazarus and the rich man, which you may remember. I'm not going to get into exactly what happens in that story, but you can look it up. She interpreted it to mean that wealthy people can't get to heaven. And I tried to explain to her what that actually means, but I ran into a double roadblock, one of which was that I didn't actually know what I was talking about, and two, because she was highly critical of Christianity and did not want to listen to me. So I just wanted to explain now. So I want to just read a few verses here for you. 5 verses, won't take very long. This is Mark chapter 10, verse 23 through 27. Jesus looked around and said to his disciples, "How hard it is for the rich to enter the kingdom of God." This amazed them, but Jesus said again, "Dear children, it is very hard to enter the kingdom of God. In fact, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God." The disciples were astounded. "Then who in the world can be saved?" they asked. Jesus looked at them intently and said, "Humanly speaking, it is impossible, but not with God. Everything is possible with God." So I was actually thinking about the implications of those few verses when I was sitting in church today. And our pastor did a reading from Mark 10, and the Bible the Bible I pulled out of the back of the seat in front of me just happened to be the King James Version, which I ordinarily avoid like the plague, as cliche as that sounds, but I did learn something kind of important from it. Because the King James Version has verse 24 as how hard it is for them that trust in riches to enter the kingdom of God, which is completely different from how hard it is for the rich to enter the kingdom of God. The implication here is that having riches is not an issue so long as your trust is in God, which is where it should be. And while verse 25 makes it clear that getting into heaven as a rich man is difficult, 2 verses later, Jesus makes it clear that with God, even that's possible. So, in other words, all you 1%ers out there, you don't have to worry so long as you put your trust in the right person. Or being. He's not really a person. That's a completely different debate. Anyway, thanks for watching. I really enjoy making these videos. I hope people actually watch them. I will see you guys next week for another one. And I will see you right back here on Tuesday for a regular vlog. Until then, stay jazzy.